There are eyes that hold entire stories, tales of loss, hope, and the journey to rediscover oneself. But not everyone has the patience to stop and listen. Some stories take us by surprise, stories of betrayal, loyalty, and the moments that change a life forever. This isn't just another story about an abandoned stray dog. This is the journey of a warrior, a soul once cast aside by the world, yet against all odds it found its way back to trust, purpose, and belonging in a way no one could have imagined. And more importantly, this story might just change the way you see kindness and resilience. If you love heartfelt stories about our four-legged friends, make sure to subscribe to Dog Stories today. Your support means the world to us. Right now, get ready for a story you will never forget. On the edge of a bustling road in the suburbs of New Orleans, Louisiana, a small, frail figure lay curled up on the sidewalk, almost blending into the dust-streaked pavement. Bella, a German shepherd, huddled against the cold, her fur dirty, matted, and tangled, barely covering her thin, emaciated frame. Her eyes were hollow, devoid of hope, as if life itself had taught her that wishing for something better was pointless. It had been 2 years since she was abandoned. Once, she had a home, a place filled with warmth and love, where every morning she would run joyfully, her tail wagging as she greeted her owner. But all of that ended on that fateful day, the moment the car door slammed shut and the vehicle sped away, leaving her alone in an unfamiliar street. She waited. She waited in vain. In the beginning, Bella clung to her memories, lingering around the streets where she had been left behind, watching every passing car, hoping to see a familiar face. But as time passed, hunger and the biting cold forced her to let go of the past. Now, her life was nothing more than a daily struggle for survival, scavenging through trash piles for food, seeking out any safe corner to rest her exhausted body. Every day was a battle, where she had to dodge careless kicks, evade people who chased her away, and stay clear of aggressive stray dogs. The world around her kept moving, but no one ever stopped to notice her. Hundreds of people walked past, businessmen in suits, eyes glued to their phones, elegant women stepping out of luxury boutiques, children giggling as they crossed the street, all of them lost in their own worlds. Not a single one of them saw Bella. Even when Bella curled up in a corner outside a cafe, her stomach growling with hunger, her eyes too weary to beg, no one stopped to toss her even a single crumb. The cafe staff simply waved her away with cold indifference, as if she were nothing more than a stain on their spotless tiled floor. In stark contrast to Bella's poverty, sleek luxury cars sped past, their headlights briefly illuminating her dirty, matted fur before vanishing into the night. To the world, she was invisible. But what Bella didn't know was that her fate was about to change forever. In her fragmented dreams, old memories still haunted her. A blurred image surfaced, a grand house with a lush green garden where sunlight poured in every morning and a cool breeze drifted through the glass windows at night. There, she once had a name. Max, a name she hadn't heard in over 2 years. Back then, Max was not a stray. She was a strong, proud German shepherd, once belonging to a wealthy family in the suburbs of New Orleans. Her owner, Daniel Harrison, was a successful man who lived with his wife and their young daughter, Lily. To Lily, Max was not just a dog. She was a best friend, a guardian, her entire world. The days were filled with warmth and happiness. Max chased after Lily on the soft grass, darting after the fluffy balls the little girl threw. And every night, she would curl up at the foot of Lily's bed, standing watch over her small, peaceful dreams. Lily's laughter was the sweetest sound Max had ever known, the kind of joy that filled her heart every time the little girl hugged her tight and whispered secrets only the two of them could understand. But then, everything changed. Max began to sense a strange tension growing inside the house. Daniel, who once laughed and spoke cheerfully, now sat at the dinner table with a furrowed brow and a heavy gaze. Late-night phone calls, his wife's exhausted sighs, and the increasing arguments. Something was terribly wrong. One night, Max saw Lily sobbing in her bedroom, clutching her stuffed bear tightly against her chest. Concerned, she approached, gently licking the little girl's hand, trying to comfort her. But Lily only whispered something that Max couldn't understand. "They said we can't stay here anymore." Not long after, the truth unraveled. The Harrison family had gone bankrupt. Daniel's business had collapsed under heavy debts, and the home they once cherished was no longer theirs. They had to leave the city and start over. That morning, as the family prepared to leave, Lily hugged Max tightly, her small body trembling. Hot tears soaked into Max's thick fur. "Dad says I can't take Max with me." Her voice cracked between sobs. Max could feel the pain and helplessness in her fragile embrace, but she couldn't understand. Why was her little owner so heartbroken? Why had all the furniture disappeared? Why wasn't anyone explaining what was happening? Then one day, the Harrison family drove out to the outskirts of town. The car slowed to a stop on an empty roadside, where tall trees swayed gently in the wind. The door swung open, and Max was led outside. Lily didn't step out. She remained inside the car, her tear-filled eyes locked onto Max, her small hands pressed against the cold window. Daniel gently ran his hand over Max's head one last time. "I'm sorry, Max. I have no other choice." And with that, the car door slammed shut. The engine roared to life, and the tires rolled forward on the asphalt road. Max ran. She ran with everything she had, chasing after the spinning wheels as if only she could run a little faster, everything would go back to the way it was. But the car kept moving further away, leaving behind a loyal dog, desperately sprinting after it, her heart refusing to let go. Until finally, she couldn't keep up anymore. Max stood there, panting, watching as the car disappeared beyond the distant rows of houses. She didn't understand. She sat down and waited. Noon came and went. Nightfall draped over the sky. Max was still waiting. She believed they would come back. But then a day passed, then a week. Hunger began to tear through her body. She wandered the streets, searching for a trace of their car, a familiar scent, a familiar face. But there was nothing. And then she understood the truth. No one was coming back. Her loyalty had not been enough to change reality. Once, she had been loved. Now, she was just another stray in a world that didn't see her. With her stomach gnawing at her from the inside, she learned how to survive. She rummaged through trash cans, stayed away from vicious stray dogs, and every night she curled up in dark corners, trying to keep her frail body warm. Day by day, she forgot the name Max. Now she was just Bella, a shadow wandering the streets, nameless, homeless, with no one waiting for her. Do you think a dog can understand what it means to be betrayed? The heavy rain began to pour over New Orleans, accompanied by the distant rumbling of thunder rolling across the sky. The air turned icy, the streets were drenched, and reflections of passing headlights shimmered across the puddles on the pavement. Bella trudged forward, her steps heavy and labored, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she struggled to find shelter. For days, she had been utterly exhausted. Hunger, cold, and the weight of both physical and emotional pain were slowly wearing her down. The old wounds from fights with stray dogs had yet to heal, and now she had barely a shred of strength left to keep moving. Up ahead, the scent of food wafted from a small restaurant. A man stepped out, holding a half-eaten sandwich in his hand. Bella's survival instincts took over. She made a reckless decision. Without hesitation, she darted across the road. But she failed to notice something crucial. The screech of tires tore through the stormy night. A silver SUV was barreling forward, too fast. The rain blurred the driver's vision, and they didn't see the small, fragile figure rushing into the street. A single moment. Crash. The impact sent Bella flying, her small body tumbling across the slick pavement, rolling again and again before slamming against the curb. A blinding pain ripped through her hind leg, sharp and unbearable. The world around her began to slow, fading into a haze of rain, pain, and darkness. All sounds began to fade, leaving only the shallow breaths and weak heartbeat echoing in the silence. Blood from her legs slowly spread, mixing with the rainwater on the slick pavement. Bella tried to lift her head, but her body no longer obeyed. Her vision blurred. Darkness crept in. Not far away, a police cruiser patrolled the street, its headlights slicing through the rain. Inside the car, Officer Isabella Jane stared out the window, her sharp eyes scanning the familiar streets of New Orleans. She was not the kind of officer who simply went through the motions. She was always observant, always noticing things that others overlooked. As the car turned the corner, she narrowed her eyes. "Stop the car," she commanded. Her partner, Officer Elijah Thomas, immediately slammed the brakes. "What is it?" he asked, his deep voice laced with tension. Isabella didn't answer right away. She had already spotted the small figure lying motionless on the road, blood pooling on the pavement. Both officers jumped out of the car. Elijah was instantly on guard. It could be a stray. We can't take any risks. His grip tightened around the catch pole, his expression firm. But Isabella wasn't listening anymore. She stared at the dog in front of her. Its soaked black fur clung to its frail body, trembling under the relentless rain. But its eyes, they were wide open, locked onto hers. There was no aggression, no sign of threat. Only pain, desperation, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Elijah remained still, his grip on the catch-pole unwavering. "Isabella, be careful," he warned. But Isabella stepped forward without hesitation. She knelt down, her eyes filled with concern. "Hey there, sweetheart, are you okay?" Her voice was gentle, but inside a deep ache tightened in her chest. Bella stirred slightly, but the pain kept her from lifting herself up. That was when Isabella noticed the horrific wound on its hind leg. Blood kept pouring out, and worse, a fragment of bone was exposed. A shiver ran down Isabella's spine. "We can't leave it here." She turned sharply to Elijah, urgency thick in her voice. Elijah hesitated, his expression calculating. "I get that you care about animals, but this is just a stray. We have bigger responsibilities." Isabella gritted her teeth. "Elijah, if we don't do something, it's going to die." A heavy silence hung between them. Only the sound of the pounding rain and Bella's faint, struggling breaths filled the air. Finally, Elijah let out a deep sigh and reached for his radio. "I'll call the nearest military veterinary hospital, but you're taking responsibility for this." Isabella didn't hesitate. "I will." Minutes later, a veterinary ambulance arrived, its sirens cutting through the storm. 2 paramedics rushed out, carefully lifting Bella onto a stretcher, wrapping her wound in a temporary bandage. Bella looked up at Isabella, her vision fading from exhaustion. But this time there was something different in her eyes, a tiny flicker of light. For the first time in 2 years, she felt warmth from a human touch. Isabella gently stroked her head, whispering, "I won't let anyone abandon you ever again." Bella closed her eyes. For the first time, she believed she might not be alone anymore. As the ambulance sped away into the storm, Isabella remained standing there, watching. She didn't know what had driven her to act so instinctively. But there was one thing she was certain of. This moment had changed both of their lives forever. The ambulance doors swung open as a paramedic carefully carried Bella inside, laying her on a stretcher. Inside the military veterinary hospital, the air was thick with the sharp scent of antiseptics. Bright fluorescent lights cast stark white reflections against the cold, sterile walls. Isabella hurried after them, her soaked shoes squeaking against the polished hospital floor. She could feel her heartbeat pounding as her eyes locked onto Bella, her frail, exhausted body, her half-closed eyes, her shallow, struggling breaths. A veterinary surgeon approached, his expression grim. "She's in critical condition." He quickly assessed Bella's injuries, his gaze fixing on her hind leg where blood had already seeped through the temporary bandage. A nurse beside him immediately began removing the dressing, revealing a horrifying sight. The surrounding tissue was severely necrotic, deep red blotched with purple bruising. Isabella's hands clenched into fists. "How bad is it?" Her voice was tight, nearly breaking. The doctor took a deep breath, his eyes filled with concern. "We need to operate immediately. The infection in her hind leg is severe. If we don't amputate, it will spread, and she won't survive." The words hit Isabella like a hammer, echoing in her mind. Amputate a leg? That would mean Bella would never be the same again. She looked down at the fragile creature before her, the dog that had once run so freely, now lying motionless and weak on the examination table. She had already endured so much pain. Isabella couldn't bear the thought of her losing anything more. "Is there any other way?" "I don't want to." Her voice trailed off. The doctor met her gaze, his voice steady but firm. "I understand how you feel, but if we don't operate, she won't make it. We don't have much time." The words echoed in Isabella's mind. She lowered her gaze, placing a gentle hand on Bella's head. She had made a promise. She wouldn't let Bella be abandoned again. If this was the only way to save her, there was no other choice. She took a deep breath. Do whatever it takes to save her. The moments before surgery, the veterinary team sprang into action, preparing the operating table, checking the anesthesia equipment. A nurse carefully lifted Bella, wrapping her in a warm blanket as if trying to preserve every fragile breath she had left. Isabella never took her eyes off Bella. She stepped closer, knelt beside her, and gently held Bella's front paw, squeezing it in her hands. Bella looked up at her, her eyes filled with trust. There was no fear, no panic, only a quiet peace, as if she knew Isabella wouldn't leave her side. Isabella forced a smile, though her voice trembled as she whispered, "Everything will be okay. I promise." Bella closed her eyes, surrendering her fate into Isabella's hands. A few moments later, the anesthesia began to take effect. Her body grew heavier, her breathing steadied. The doctors wheeled her into the operating room. Isabella stood in the hallway, her palms damp with sweat. The surgery begins, 3 hours of agonizing waiting. The second hand on the clock ticked forward slowly, each passing minute stretching into what felt like an eternity. Isabella sat in the waiting area, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes never leaving the closed doors of the operating room. She had never felt so powerless before. Thoughts spiraled relentlessly in her mind. What if she doesn't make it? Can she even survive with only 3 legs? Did I make the right decision? Elijah sat beside her, watching in silence. He could tell Isabella was battling something deeper than just concern for a dog. Finally, he reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I've never seen you worry this much over a dog," he said, his voice thoughtful. Isabella let out a faint, tired chuckle, but her eyes remained filled with unwavering determination. "She's not just a dog, Elijah. She's a fighter, and she deserves a second chance." Elijah didn't reply right away, but he studied her for a moment longer, as if realizing that this wasn't just about Bella, it was about Isabella too. Then, suddenly, the operating room doors swung open. The surgeon stepped out, and Isabella leapt to her feet, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. The doctor pulled down his mask and let out a deep sigh, but in his eyes there was a glimmer of relief. The surgery was successful. She's going to live. Isabella froze for a few seconds before finally exhaling deeply, as if a massive weight had just been lifted off her shoulders. "Thank God," she whispered. But then, the doctor's tone grew more somber. "However," he continued, Isabella's relief turned to unease as she looked at him. "Her life will never be the same. She will have to learn how to live with only 3 legs. Without a moment of hesitation, Isabella nodded firmly. "As long as she's alive, I'll help her learn." And with those words, Bella's life officially entered a new chapter, one of hope, of struggles, but most importantly, of unconditional love. Waking up in confusion. The room around her was silent. Bella slowly opened her eyes, blinking against the dim light from the hospital ceiling. The sharp scent of antiseptics lingered in the air, and the steady beeping of machines filled the otherwise quiet space. Her body felt heavy, her mind blank, as if she had just woken up from a long, hazy dream. She could feel a dull ache in her lower body, but something was wrong. Bella tried to move, but the moment she did, a strange imbalance overtook her. A wave of panic crept into her chest. She slowly lowered her gaze, and her heart stopped. Her left hind leg was gone. Bella panicked. She tried to move, but collapsed instantly. Her breathing quickened, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. She tried to lift her remaining hind leg, desperate to stand, but each attempt ended in failure. Her body kept falling, crashing to the ground. For the first time in her life, Bella felt utterly powerless. A soft sigh broke the silence. "Easy, Bella. I'm right here." A gentle touch, a voice, warm, familiar. Bella looked up and saw Isabella Jane, the woman who had rescued her from the storm that night. She was sitting beside her, her hand gently stroking Bella's head, radiating a sense of safety that Bella had long forgotten. Isabella didn't force her to stand. She didn't pity her. She simply sat there, patient and understanding, giving Bella the time she needed to process her new reality. The first difficult days. The surgery was successful, but Bella's journey to recovery had only just begun. In the days that followed, she had to learn how to live a completely different life. Every time Isabella entered the hospital room, Bella just lay there, unmoving, her sorrowful eyes staring out the window. She no longer tried to stand. Isabella understood. A warrior who had once been so strong was now trapped in helplessness. But Isabella refused to let her drown in despair. She brought a support harness, helping Bella learn to move, little by little. "We're going to do this together, okay?" she whispered, gentle but unwavering. The first steps on 3 legs. Day 1, Bella stumbled immediately. Day 2, she tried to take a step, but her body buckled from the imbalance. Day 3, she managed to stand for a few seconds before collapsing again. With each failure, Isabella was right there beside her, never discouraged, never pushing too hard. She simply comforted her, offering soft encouragement whenever she fell. "It's okay, Bella. You're doing great." Then, one morning, as Isabella pushed open the hospital room door, she couldn't believe her eyes. Bella was standing. Slowly, carefully, but she was standing on 3 legs. Isabella's lips curled into a smile, her eyes glimmering with emotion. "Good girl, Bella." Stepping into the outside world, once Bella was able to walk on her own, Isabella made a decision. It was time to take her outside for the first time. They arrived at a small park near the hospital where lush green trees swayed under the gentle sunlight. At first, Bella hesitated, her eyes still flickering with uncertainty. Around her, other dogs ran freely, their owners laughing and chatting nearby. Bella froze, lowering her head as if she wanted to disappear. But Isabella refused to let her give up. She gently tugged the leash, crouching down as she whispered, "You don't have to be afraid anymore, Bella. You're so much stronger than you think." Bella took a deep breath. She glanced around once more. Then, slowly, she lifted her paw and took a step beside Isabella. The first step, then the second. And just like that, she kept walking. For the first time in months, she felt the wind brushing through her fur, the sunlight gently touching her body. For the first time, she felt like herself again. A new beginning. Day by day, Bella started to change. She was no longer afraid of people's gazes. She wagged her tail whenever Isabella walked into the room. She grew more confident, walking without hesitation, no longer struggling with the reality of having only 3 legs. She learned how to play again, finding joy in the little things. Isabella watched every moment of her transformation, and deep in her heart, something became clearer than ever. Bella was not just a poor stray she had rescued by chance. Bella was a warrior, a soul that had once been abandoned by the world, but refused to let it define her fate. Have you ever seen an animal overcome hardship with such strength? Let dog stories know in the comments below. If you've ever thought that animals lack determination, then perhaps you've never witnessed a 3-legged dog learning to walk again. Bella lost everything, her family, her freedom, and even a part of her body. But the one thing she never lost was hope. And now she was on her way to reclaiming her life. A life-changing decision. That spring, the sky over New Orleans was clearer than ever. Soft sunlight filtered through the trees, casting warm golden patches over the front yard of the military veterinary hospital, where Bella stood firmly on 3 legs, her ears perked up with excitement. It had been months since the surgery that changed her life forever, and today she was fully healed. Beside her, Isabella knelt down, placing a gentle hand on Bella's back, her eyes filled with love and admiration. "You've come such a long way, Bella." Bella looked up at her, her eyes shimmering with trust. She was no longer the frail, lonely stray she once was. Now, she was stronger than ever. For weeks, Isabella had been thinking about this moment. From the very first night she had found Bella, weak and injured in the storm, to watching her fight for every step on 3 legs, one thing had become clearer than ever. Bella wasn't just a dog she had saved by chance. She was family. Isabella took a deep breath. "Bella, would you like to come home with me?" Bella's ears perked up, her eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. A brief moment of silence. Then she wagged her tail vigorously, lifting herself on 3 legs and stepping toward Isabella, pressing her head into her chest. The answer was clear. A new life, without fear. From that day forward, Bella stepped into an entirely new chapter of her life. She no longer had to wander the streets in hunger. She no longer had to curl up in the cold, dreading the night, or live in fear of being chased away by humans. Now she had a warm bed inside Isabella's home, a food bowl that was never empty, and most importantly, a person who loved and cared for her unconditionally. Every morning, Bella ran alongside Isabella, trotting through the quiet streets of their neighborhood. She no longer feared the stares of strangers, no longer shrank away in hesitation. She embraced the world with strength and trust. But there was something even more extraordinary. Bella wasn't just a rescued dog. She had found a new purpose in life. a true warrior. When Isabella brought Bella to the police station where she worked, everyone was stunned by how intelligent and alert she was. One day, during a canine training session, Bella unexpectedly showed an incredible sense of smell. She quickly located a hidden object that had taken other trained police dogs much longer to find. This caught the attention of the chief, who suggested that Isabella consider training Bella as a service dog. At first, Isabella hesitated. Could a three-legged dog take on such a demanding role? But Bella didn't hesitate at all. She passed every test, every challenge, with astonishing determination. And before long, Bella became an official member of the K9 unit, assisting the police in investigations, searching for evidence, and supporting officers in their missions. Her story quickly spread like wildfire, becoming a source of inspiration for many. A dog that had once been abandoned, hopeless, and on the brink of death was now helping others, becoming a symbol of loyalty and resilience. News outlets began writing about Bella. Those who had witnessed her journey firsthand could hardly believe that the same dog who had once starved on the streets was now standing strong on her remaining legs. People started calling her the three-legged warrior. But to Isabella, Bella was simply Bella. A friend, a companion, and an irreplaceable part of her life. Defying fate. One evening, as Isabella sat beside Bella, gently stroking her soft fur, she whispered, "You once thought you were just an abandoned stray, didn't you? But now you've proven that fate doesn't decide who we become." Bella wagged her tail, her eyes shimmering with happiness. She no longer remembered the days of being abandoned, of being hurt and afraid. Now, her life was filled with love, purpose, and the unwavering presence of someone who would always stand by her side. Bella had lost everything once, but because of one act of kindness, because one person refused to turn away, she found her way back to life. Do you believe that a small act of kindness today could change someone's life forever? Because sometimes just one moment, one decision, can alter a destiny. In this world, there are stories that restore our faith in loyalty, resilience, and the power of kindness. Bella was once abandoned. She lost hope. She believed that life was nothing more than an endless cycle of loneliness. But through one act of compassion, everything changed forever. From a lost and wandering stray, she became a true warrior, not just surviving, but helping others in return. Bella's story is a powerful reminder that loyalty never fades, even when the world turns its back on you. Resilience can help you overcome any challenge, no matter how impossible it seems. A single act of kindness can change an entire life, and you can be the one to make that change. If you believe in the power of inspiring stories, if you want to keep hearing tales of loyalty, courage, and moments that touch the heart, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button for Dog Stories Today. Turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story. Every story is a journey, and we want you to be part of it. Share your thoughts. What do you think about Bella's journey? Have you ever met a dog or an animal that overcame adversity in an extraordinary way? Leave a comment below and share your story. We'd love to hear from you. And who knows, one day, your story might be featured on Dog Stories for the world to hear. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this incredible journey. See you in the next heartwarming story.